good morning. Thank you all for being here. We happy few, in the days of coronavirus. This is the strangest King Institute event we have ever had already, I think. And that's even before Jennifer steps up to the mic, which is saying something. I'm very pleased to have you here. Pleased to see your mask and your distance, and the way that that everybody here has been chipping in to try to keep infections down in this strange and difficult time. The King Faculty Lectures go back to 1960. This is a tradition with now 60 years of practice at the college, in which students have chosen faculty members to come and address some area of interest to them. It may be an academic specialty, it might be something more personal, but it's been a great tradition here at King, and we're delighted today to have Jennifer Mongold as part of that tradition. This fall, the only events we're going to hold are faculty and student lectures. We'll have the other faculty lecturer, Jody Helbert, and then 2 students coming up, and I'll have those advertised on the Facebook site and elsewhere. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Jada Owens to introduce Jennifer.
Well, I wasn't really prepared to say anything, but Professor Mongold's one of the best professors that I've had in the criminal justice. She's someone that I tend to look up to going throughout the school year and my 4 years being here. She makes it comfortable to talk to her about anything, and I know that she'll be that person that will always bring things to the attention of the other faculty members on campus. She's someone that sticks up for people in general, not just certain people. She makes things known, and she takes her time to put aside things and break down things to better understand for herself, and she gives us a chance to speak on certain things in a comfortable environment. I'm more than excited to be introducing her right now, and Professor Mongold.
I wanted to give her a thank you hug, but I don't think that's allowed right now. So, thank you. I'll grab my water. And since everybody's really far away from me and the doors are open, I'm going to take this off if no one strenuously objects. I do teach with my mask on for those of you who are keeping track of those kinds of things, but I promise you that I do teach in my mask and fog up my glasses while I teach and have to teach blind by taking my glasses off, but I'm going to go without the mask for just a little while. I am so incredibly nervous to be up here and very honored, and I was thrilled when I found out that you all voted to hear from me this year. I have sat through so many honors convocations in April where they announce who it's going to be, and I have been like, please don't be me, please don't be me. Like they would just spring that on you or something, and then they say the names and I'm like, oh, thank God. Okay, this is somebody else, because it was just to see my colleagues up here year after year. It always felt like an honor that was given to those professors who had earned it, and I feel like I'm not there just yet, so I'm glad that you guys think that I am. So I thought that it would be maybe a little less nerve-wracking to be up here with COVID and the restrictions for the number of people in the chapel, and I was wrong about that, but that's all right. For those of you tuning in, there are a few people here, so I'm not speaking to an empty chapel, just a mostly empty chapel. So you can see from my title here that I'm going to be talking about comparison and the evils of comparison. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, a lot of different things, though, associated with comparison in the criminal justice system, because that is my field of study. My background is in mediation and restorative justice. I worked in the juvenile justice system, and when people have an issue, even here on campus today, if there is a conflict, they call me in to help mediate that. And so I always say that I've got like the worst skill set, the most uncomfortable skill set of anybody here on campus. So I want to share a little bit of that with you guys today, because my other research interest, besides mediation, conflict resolution, and restorative justice, is on sexual assault and rape. So we're going to be talking about that specifically in the lecture today, my research on sexual assault and rape. Now, that is a very difficult topic, so if you feel uncomfortable, please go ahead and step out, stop watching. I'm going to share some resources at the end of this presentation, so you can, if this stirs up some feelings or some issues with you, there's some people that you can contact. My other area of research when I was in graduate school was in suicide. So, when I tell you guys that the stuff that I know about is not fun, I'm serious. The stuff that I know about and the stuff that I research is not fun, and it's difficult. But I really do like to dig into those difficult subjects. And like Jada said in that introduction, I love to make my classroom a safe space for students to be able to express their ideas and feelings about some of these things. So I try not to back away from some of those difficult conversations. So we're going to have a little bit of a difficult conversation, or a lot of a difficult conversation in here today. So first, you got my introduction from Jada, but let's go over a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, and then I'll tell you a few little tidbits about me. So here's the stuff we're going to discuss, because in my title, I said, how comparison ruins me, it ruins you, it ruins criminal justice system, just everything. So of course that means we're going to talk about me. So ready yourself for that exciting topic. We're going to talk about comparison, and we're going to talk about the just world belief, which maybe is something you're not familiar with, and how it's related to sexual assault. We're going to talk about this in relation to King University students. Some of you maybe filled out a survey, and you're going to recognize some of the things I'm going to talk about from a survey that you filled out last year about sexual assault. So we're going to look at numbers about things called Rape Myth Acceptance here at King University. So we're going to have a little bit of introspection time today. And then we'll discuss how the implications of these issues within the criminal justice system. And then, because I'm up here and you guys are captive, we're probably going to talk about me just a little bit more. Because, is that not your favorite topic? Yourself? Not me, but yourself? Anyway. I swear people are laughing, for those of you who are watching on the live stream. You can't see these pictures really great in here because it's very bright in this beautiful chapel, but I've got a picture up here of my boys. So a little bit about me. I've got two cute little boys, and they come to campus with me every once in a while. Zach's in the glasses. He's 6. Grant, with the COVID, needs a haircut hair in that picture. And then in the middle is my favorite son, and they know it. That is Toby. I've always been a cat person, but there's my Toby. I got a dog at the beginning of the pandemic, and I love him. So here I am, mother of 2 boys, mother of a puppy, also a mother of a cute little kitty cat. That is Joseph. His name is Joseph Patrick Kitten, but sorry, that's his name. But he just found out, he's 16, he's my oldest boy, and just found out he has glaucoma in his left eye, and it's bloody cloudy, so he's got this bloody eye, and I'm currently, I call him Vicious Killer, but I'm looking for a Bond villain name for him if anybody's got any suggestions. Blood eye, red eye, none of that stuff really sounds any good, but I'm looking for a good Bond villain name for my bloody-eyed cat. And because, again, he's my favorite, that's Toby again. That's my Toby. I love being here at King. I participate in all kinds of things that come up because I like being around students. I like being around other faculty. It's so much fun to do some of the things that we do here and gather as a community, and I look forward to some of these things again. So some of the things I've participated in, I very famously played kickball, which some people saw, and it was traumatic for me, but it was fun. And that might be the end of my intramural career, I'm not sure. But I go on the DC trip every year. This is me photo bombing on our Segway tour that Dr. Bromlick and I took some students on. It was one of my favorite things we've done in DC. And they were taking a group shot of the guys, and I was like, and I just leaned into my Segway and I photo bombed. That's me as Santa Claus last year. That was probably, besides this, one of my favorite honors. When they asked me to be the surprise Santa Claus at late night breakfast, I was like, absolutely, I will be Santa Claus. I will absolutely be Santa Claus. I love being here. I love being around you guys. And so there's a little bit about me and about being here at King and how much I love it. So, and this is the end of the fun part of the presentation. And now we get to some seriousness. So I'll start, before we jump into the sexual assault and rape statistics that we are going to be discussing, I want to talk a little bit about the title of this, The Evils of Comparison. Because comparison is the thing that makes us uncomfortable. It's the thing that exacerbates any issues that we have personally when we try to compare ourselves to somebody else, because when you compare to something else, you're probably not going to measure up. The reason that you're comparing, there's lots of different reasons to compare yourself to other people. Sometimes it's as easy as just wanting to make that human connection with somebody. You're wanting to compare your life experience with somebody else's and feel a connection to them. And that is a fine way to compare. But one of the comparisons that I tend to make too often is reading articles online about different crime stories and things, or tragic events and stories that happen, like this one. This one specifically, I remember reading this. I was actually at the beach when I saw this headline, and because I don't have a pool at my house, but the rental place where we were, there was a pool, and I had a 4-year-old, and at the time, and I was like, 3-year-old dies in a tragic pool accident, and the mom is saying, this could happen to anybody. And I was like, well, let me read this and see what actually happened, because I bet then it's not going to happen to me. I read it to see if what happened to that family, if they could be blamed somehow. I read it to see, I'm like, what was it that the mom did? What was it that the dad did, or the caregivers, that made it this situation where a 3-year-old child could drown? That's why I was reading it. I wasn't reading it to empathize. I wasn't reading it just to read a story. I was reading it, very truly reading it, to see how I could separate myself from the people in these events, and that's not helpful. I read it, and in that story, if I remember correctly, with this story, she just kind of was off doing something for just a couple of moments, and that's when it doesn't take long for a child to drown, and they can drown in a very little bit of water. And she had just stepped away, been alone, let the child be alone for just a few moments. And I'm like, well, there it is. There's my difference. I'm like, okay, I don't have a pool, so that's good. But, I was vacationing at that moment at a place with a pool. So I don't have a pool, so that makes me safe. And I wouldn't leave my kids alone long enough for them to get into some kind of trouble. But let me tell you that I do leave my kids alone enough for them to get into some kind of trouble. If you can see the picture up here, I wish you could see a little bit better. That's Grant when he was 3, actually. And he's got a marker, and he's drawn on his face. And at first I was like, oh, how cute. Like, these lines were so super straight, and I was like, you're going to be an engineer, and I was like taking a picture. This is so cute. But he did it because I was cleaning the house, and I wasn't watching him. Then around the corner, I turn around, like just off to this side is a chair that he has also drawn all over. So I was like, well, okay, it's not really as cute anymore. But this is, I show you this as evidence that I absolutely can turn my head long enough for something to happen to a child. And me reading that article and giving myself this false sense of security, it does not do anything. It makes me less protective. It makes me pay less attention to him, because I'm like, well, that's never going to happen to me, and here's why. It makes me less empathic towards the people that this does happen to. And this kind of thing, how many people have read stories about kids being left in the back of cars and in the summertime and then dying because it's so hot? And I think, well, that will never happen to me. But how many of you have been driving down the road and then not known, like 15 minutes have gone by and you're like, you don't remember the last 15 minutes? Like, all of us have done that. And reading these stories, it doesn't do anything but vilify the other individual to make these kinds of comparisons. We're trying to make ourselves feel better, but in the end, we're not doing anything to make any difference in the situation. But we all do it. We all do it all the time, and we especially do it in the criminal justice system, which is what I want to talk about today. One of the reasons that we do it, one of the theoretical explanations for why we're making these comparisons, is called the just world belief. The just world belief is basically this idea, it's a psychological concept, that we think that fairness reigns, that if we do good work, we're going to be rewarded. If we screw up, we're going to be punished. So we believe in justice. We believe in that the world is a just place to live. And this really it doesn't happen. If I think about the poor mother whose son drowned, what did she do to deserve that? She didn't do anything to deserve that. So the just world belief creates a lot of issues, but I definitely hold some values and beliefs that fit into this idea of a just world. And some of them come from just growing up in this area in the United States, the American dream, that idea that we can, if we do well and try hard, we will overcome whatever issue that we have, that we will make the money, that we will be able to buy the house and have the boat and the nice cars. If we work hard, if we have that good, strong Protestant work ethic. We all have it. We probably wouldn't be in college if we didn't have a little bit of that belief within us. So I don't want to say that it's all evil and all bad, but it really does go against some of our biblical beliefs as Christians. The idea of grace is not something that we earn; it's something that's given, and we really don't deserve it. So the just world belief that we all hold, whatever part of it, and it is a continuum. So maybe some of us are really strong in this just world belief, and some of us just hold some values of it. It doesn't fit a lot. It doesn't fit that biblical narrative of grace, despite it being this idea of being often referred to as the Protestant work ethic. The main problem with the just world belief, since we all hold a little bit of it, is how it affects some of these things of comparison within the criminal justice system. The people who endorse high rates of that just world belief also have high rates of rape myth acceptance. And so that's the problem with the just world belief, and the belief that bad things happen to bad people and good things happen to good people. So what is rape myth acceptance? This idea of rape myth acceptance has been discussed since it was named in 1980. And it's beliefs about rape that are not true. They are things that we commonly perceive as being like the true story or actually what's happening in the world about rape and sexual assault, but they're not true. And they're really, really, really hard to eradicate. People, we've come a long way in our beliefs about rape and sexual assault and victims of sexual assault, but we have not, we're not really where we should be. Rape myth acceptance has gone down since we started to study this in the 80s, but it still exists. And we'll see how it exists on this campus in a few minutes. It relates back to this idea of the ideal rape victim. The ideal rape victim is somebody who's walking down the street alone, and a woman, unsafe, in an unsafe place, and a man, an unknown man, a stranger, attacks her and rapes her, or breaks into someone's home and rapes her there. This is the ideal victim, the blameless victim, because they've done nothing but walk down the street. They've done nothing but be in their home where they thought they were safe. This is the ideal rape victim. And rape myth acceptance, because we have this idea of what an ideal rape victim is, rape myth acceptance then exists, because the ideal rape victim is not our typical rape victim. This next set of slides, there's several, and they're going to be difficult to read, so I'll probably attempt to read a few to you. But these are the questions on the rape myth acceptance. So this will show you what rape myths are. So those false beliefs about rape. And these are in the form of questions. Again, some of you maybe saw this survey come out. 106 students took it last spring. And it's a scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree. And so people can agree with these statements or disagree with the statements that are up here. So a woman who is skimpily dressed deserves, basically, the rape. If she's drunk, she should not have let herself get out of control. Women shouldn't tease men, and this is in the form of clothing or tempting or flirting. The women are raped because their no was too ambiguous. They should have more clearly said no. If a woman does not physically fight back during a rape, then it's not a rape. There should be some physical fighting back. If the rapist doesn't have a weapon, you can't call it rape. A woman can't resist if a man is so sexually aroused as to not be able to stop. This is actually being played out in the state of North Carolina right now. They're trying to pass a law, or they have a law, that once the sexual act has started, that it can be completed even if the woman withdraws consent. That's in North Carolina. We're not too far from North Carolina. Sometimes men get too carried away, so they're not meaning to rape, they get too carried away, related there. Women find it a turn on, this time, rape or sexual assault, being forced. Sometimes women lead men on and then cry rape afterwards. Because of this next one also, sometimes rape accusations are just women trying to get back at a man. They've often changed their minds. And that, when women say they've been raped, really what has happened is that they've changed their mind. Rape isn't as big a problem as feminists would like to think. It's not as bad as being mugged or being robbed. If you dress suggestively, that's when a woman is raped. It's unlikely to happen in your own neighborhood. Women are almost never raped by their boyfriends or significant others. When you hang out in bars, it's no big deal if a woman's willing to make out with somebody. It's no big deal. You should kind of expect that to be the next follow-up step. Okay. Those are some of the questions that you all answered, or students answered, in the survey that went out. You would have gotten an email from Samantha Oplinger. This was some research that we did, her and I did together for her honors thesis. So let's spend some time looking at some statistics and actual facts and debunk some of these myths. Now these are beliefs. You read some of those beliefs and think, people don't actually believe that. But if we were to look at every single question, and we're going to look at some of the questions, here on this campus, at least a few people believe every single one of those things. So this is something that is real. This is something that happens here on this campus. One of the big ones is that ideal stranger rape myth, that the offender is going to be a stranger, but in 80% of rapes, the female knows the offender, whether it's a boyfriend or a husband, girlfriend, significant other, a relative. They know the person, a friend. They know the person who has attacked them 80% of the time. So right off the bat, that ideal rape victim just does not exist. The one rape myth about it not, if you stay at home, you're safe, basically, because it doesn't happen in the neighborhood where you are. It does. 67% of the time, it's going to be happening at the person's home or family member's home. So 2/3 of the time, it's happening in a place where you should be feeling safe, around people that you should be safe with. The big one, and this is one of the ones that I want to spend some time talking about, that idea of the false accusation. That's the fear when with believing rape victims and sexual assault victims. The fear is that they're lying about it, and that they're doing this to get attention, or they are doing this to get back at somebody. Well, our numbers show us that only 2% of reported rapes are actual false claims of rape or sexual assault. So only 2%. And then of those false claims, it's usually when the false claim is usually in a case where they don't even know who the attacker is. They're not saying it was you or you or you or it was this friend or whoever. They're just saying they were raped and wanting an investigation into it. And so most of the time that's not even what is happening. And only 18% of those 2%, mind you, 18% of those 2%, there was actually a named person in the case. So are women doing this to get back at men? There are very, very, very few people who are. The lifetime risk is down to the 0.01% for a man to be accused of rape. And for a woman to be a victim of rape, we're going to look at some numbers. If we're on a college campus, or if you're a college-aged female, your chances are pretty high. Generally, 1 in 6 women have been sexually assaulted or raped. That's just a bit of a difference between the number of the 0.0-something% of a man to be accused of rape and they actually did not do it. But we point at that and we say, well, but what if? And I don't want that to happen. I don't want the 18% of the 2%. I don't want them to be falsely accused. I don't want that at all. But I also know that all of these other percentage of women, they're not being believed, and they should be believed, but they're not being believed because of a very, 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 very tiny sliver of this population. And this causes problems in sexual assault reporting, which we'll talk about some statistics about that as well. It was mentioned in several of those questions, or a few of those questions in the rape myth acceptance scale about the woman teasing the man or wearing skimpy clothes. Well, I don't know if any of you have heard of this exhibit. It's called What You Were Wearing, and it's an exhibit. Here's a picture. An artist got people to donate the clothes that they were wearing at the time of their rape or sexual assault. And if you see the picture up here now, it's basically what a lot of us have on now. It's long pants, it's shirts with sleeves, some of them sleeveless. There's some shorts in the background. It's not about what the person is wearing. It's about the person who is doing the offending. That is what we need to be talking about. Not the victim. Not what the victim has done, but what the perpetrator has been doing. But again, we spend so much time, even the questions, if a person reports a sexual assault or rape to the police, one of the questions is, along with where were you, when did it happen, one of the questions is what were you wearing? That doesn't help the investigation. That doesn't help the investigation at all. And still we ask that question. So these rape myth beliefs that people have, what they lead to is this phenomenon called victim blaming. Because we believe these myths, we're looking for explanations for why the person has become the victim of sexual assault and rape. And we're looking basically to blame them. What is it that you did? What is it that you did when your son drowned? What was it that caused this to happen? You had to have done something to cause this to happen. Some statistics here. I've got my references on the last page for all the librarians watching. But some statistics here. People who are more likely to blame victims. Men are more likely to blame victims. Younger people more likely to blame victims. People who are Christian, not Christian, not entirely. When you get down into the very specifics of how religion is related to this, it's people who hold very fundamental beliefs. Religious fundamentalists are the ones who do a lot of victim blaming. People with lower education levels of attainment, and then also people with that high just world belief. These are the things that we see in the literature over and over and over and over and over again that blame victims for their victimization. So, you guys ready to see how we did here at King University? The 106 students who answered our survey. These are some overall numbers. And luckily, I will say, rape myth acceptance wasn't really high, but it was still there. And there were still differences between groups, and some of them pretty stark differences. Males have a significantly higher rate of rape myth acceptance than females. Christians had a significantly higher RMA score than people who identified as atheist or agnostic. And then here's a good one for our political season here. I was like, should I put this on here or not? And I was like, why not? So political ideation was asked on the survey, and people who identified as Republican had higher beliefs of rape myth acceptance than people who were independent or just apolitical or Democrat. So let's talk about some of the individual questions, because that's where some of the interesting things, not just the entire rape myth acceptance score, but some of the individual questions. What is it that we are struggling with? What part of those rape myths are we struggling with in the United States and here at King University? We did great. Like, I was looking at these numbers, we did great. Most of the questions look like this. With the correct answer, we'll say, the not believing in rape myth acceptance being on this end. That's where most people fell. Most people did not believe in those rape myths. This first one, about skimpy clothes, the woman shouldn't be surprised, we did great. Look at that. Still had some people who believed it, but for the most part, no. A woman who teases a man, well, you're asking for that as well. We did well in that question. But again, still a few people who believed it. About not physically resisting, about not having, not being an actual rape if you have, if there's no weapon, we did well. We did well on a lot of these questions, and I'm thrilled and I'm glad, but there are some questions on here that just, these myths that just hang on. And I wanted to see if we hung on to them here at King as well. You can see it starts to get a little worse when we get to some of these questions kind of in the weeds here. A lot of women lead a man on, and then they cry rape. You can see our scores aren't as good here. Still a lot of people who don't believe it. But we get more people coming down and saying, well, I don't know, maybe that's what happens. The question about using rape as a way to get back at men, same thing, even a little bit worse, actually a lot worse. A lot more accepting of that. It's like, oh, I don't know, maybe that does happen. That myth about women changing their minds, same thing. A lot of people don't believe that, but there are some people, more people, who do. The The point that I wanted to make today, and showing you guys some of the research that I do, and tying it into what happens here at what we believe here, or what some students believe here at King University, is that what you believe does matter. And it especially matters when people are vocal about some of those beliefs. It's going to affect people, especially on a college campus, because if you look at the prevalence rate of women who have been sexually assaulted, women who are of college age or in college are more likely to be sexually assaulted or raped than other women. And you can see that in the chart here. So women in college, 3 times more likely. Women just of college age, 4 times more likely. So you fall in that 18 to 24 age range, and you're 4 times more likely than me, who does not fall into that age range of being raped or sexually assaulted. So it's going to happen. You're going to know people. I guess is what I'm saying. You're going to know people. So when you talk about these things, when you talk about these rape myths, remember that how many women that hear you say that might fall into these numbers. Victims might come forward more. If we do something about these erroneous beliefs about what rape and sexual assault actually are, more women might come out and report these things, because women just do not report the sexual assault and rape to the police, by and large. 3 out of 4 rapes, the Department of Justice says, go unreported. 3 out of 4 rapes. And if you see 730,000 rapes or sexual assaults in 2018. So that means that that's just a quarter of the number of rapes and sexual assaults that happen in the United States in a year. That's just a quarter. If the research that we do into victimization is true, and I think that it is. The reasons that people don't report rape are up there: fear of reprisal, fear of not being believed. Well, why would you be afraid of not being believed? You look at those rape myths, and that is what it is over and over. It's like, well, what did you do? Are you sure you don't just feel bad about the action that you did? You brought this on yourself. Why would anybody ever say when that's what people believe? And the important thing here that I want to drive home is that you're showing yourself as someone who is safe to talk to you about victimization if you don't make those types of statements. When you are making statements that fall in line with some of those rape myths, you are telling someone who hears you speak that you are not safe to talk to, that you will judge them, that you will blame them. And that, I hope that is not the human being that you want to be. It's not the human being that I want to be. These are the types of individuals that, if you want to be somebody who is safe to talk to, these are the types of people, people who speak out about rape myths and say this stuff isn't true. That you're going to be a safe person to talk to. It's typically not a safe person if you happen to also know the perpetrator. They're not going to talk to you. That's beyond your control. And then if you've ever shared your own story, then that makes it a more comfortable person to talk to. So one of the interesting research studies that's come out in the last few years is that people have a higher rape myth acceptance when they don't know someone who has been raped or sexually assaulted. So as soon as you know somebody, then that starts to kind of change things. We hear that in a lot of things, don't we? Like, as you work closely with people who are different from you, you begin to accept them a little bit more. Well, it's the same thing here. Your rape myth acceptance goes down if you know somebody who has been sexually assaulted or raped. And I think that's very telling, that you're willing, as soon as you're like, oh, it's somebody I know, it's somebody that I care about, then you don't believe these things. Okay, that's very telling to me. And it's very important for me to try to get people to change their beliefs about rape myths and sexual assault. And so I want to tell you guys that you do know somebody now. If you think you don't, you do know somebody now who has been raped or sexually assaulted. The person with the picture at the beginning has the 3 boys and the really adorable dog named Toby. He's my favorite. The cat, who's the Bond villain, she's been sexually assaulted. And I still can't even say I, because there's so much guilt and there's so much fear around it. And there's 7 people in the whole world that know this has ever happened to me. And I'm so mad at myself because this is what I research and this is what I do and this is what I want to change. So I want people to know now, you know somebody who 15 years ago that this happened to, and it's never been reported. And I still hold a lot of fear and guilt. And luckily, the very few people that I've talked to have been very supportive. And I want to be that for other people. And I hope you guys begin to question now, as you have for sure know somebody. You already knew somebody, I guarantee it. You already know somebody who has been raped or sexually assaulted. 1 in 6 women, you already know somebody. There's 9 women in here right now. Maybe it's just me, I hope it's just me. But you've already known somebody. Quit spreading these things. Quit spreading these myths. They're not true, and we've got the numbers and the statistics to back it up. You're doing nothing but breaking down relationships. So, if this has caused any issues for you, please, I would have put I'm in Sales Hall if anybody ever wants to come talk to me. Of course, there are some things that I'm going to have to report, but I'm in Sales Hall if anybody ever wants to talk. But with COVID, my email address is up here if you want to talk. Heather Braddock, our university counselor, if you need to talk to somebody. Rain has a website. There's the phone number. They have an app. You can talk to people. And if you don't report, I don't know, that's fine. Like, if you're not there, that's fine. But there are people you can talk to. So you don't have to be still dealing with something 15 years later. There are people that you can talk to. So, here are my references, I promised, at the end. So please think twice before you say some of the things that you say. And I hope that you learned a little something about rape myth beliefs and the acceptance of that. And thank you for your time.
In doing the King Faculty Lectures every year, it celebrates the things that we do well. Teaching is a personal act here. It's something where we connect individually to students, not simply presenting material that we happen to know, but applying that to our own lives and making ourselves vulnerable as we present it to our students. And Jen has been a great example of that today. And also the connection of scholarship and great teaching, as we saw, and the connection between faith and learning, which I think she's exemplified for us this morning. So we do have a plaque to honor the moment for Jen. And I also want to say on the webcast, to say to Toby, because I know you're watching, you should be very proud, Toby, and yes, you are her favorite son. So please join me again in thanking Jen. Yes. Fantastic. And he'll put it on to YouTube, and then we can put it out so you can make it available to who else you want.